Welcome to our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. We're going to talk about the trial that's going on in Boston with Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, General, in the security that's wrapped around that building and for the Boston Marathon that's coming up. But first, let's go overseas, and there are developing news in the Middle East where now we're seeing Iran is looking to wipe out ISIS on behalf of Iraq. Question I think that's out there is where does that put the United States?
Mike, that is really significant. You know, Iran's elite forces are in fact being very successful in dealing with ISIS. What that does now is to place Iran into a position of perhaps being the primary ally to Iraq. Unfortunately, that means you have sectarian war within that area. The United States now needs to make a decision. Do we continue to put efforts to support Iraq in that scenario, or do we leave it to Iraq? It's a very precarious situation because now that means if we move out, Iran has full throttle on what happens to Iraq, and the United States is out.
What's the possibility of them then acquiring a nuclear weapon at this point by helping take ISIS out? You know, Iraq would help them with that?
Well, I'm not sure that Iraq has the ability to help them, but nevertheless, it would certainly show and demonstrate that Iran has, in fact, the upper hand in the Middle East. And with the negotiations going on right now with Kerry, Secretary of State, it does show that there's a strong possibility that they will be in a position to go from having enriched uranium to super enriched uranium, which is bomb. Obviously, the kind of caliber of uranium that's needed for that. And that's a scary proposition because Israel, a few days ago, presented that to the Congress of the United States.
Well, that's what Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, said that he is worried about. So he has legitimate beef there.
He absolutely does. And so do many of the countries in the Middle East. But specifically, Israel is most vulnerable because Iran has stated many, many times one of their primary goals is to eliminate Israel. With a nuclear weapon, that's very possible.
So what's the possibility of Iran eliminating ISIS then?
Well, I think it's very strong that they would be able to do that, not with nuclear weapons, but having the kind of minus and void of any kind of rules of engagement that we have to abide by because of our Constitution, the way we do business. Iran goes in there and she can do, and Iran will do whatever it needs to take to be done to be able to win the ISIS situation. And I think it's doable. That's a scary proposition. All
right, obviously that's a fluid situation. We're going to stay on top of that. General, let's talk about security. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's lawyer comes out with the statement this week saying, yeah, he did take part in it, basically saying that he was guilty, but he was influenced by his brothers. So they're looking to probably get around that death penalty phase. What does security look like around that building?
I think security is perhaps as high as it is for any other high-profile trial. Perhaps a little bit more because I think you do a risk analysis. When you do a risk analysis, you say, well, what happens if you have a breach of security? What happens if you have another event around the courthouse? That would certainly compromise the ability, as is being suggested by the defense, that he could have a fair trial in the Boston area. On the other hand, if the risk analysis is that nothing would happen, the next phase of the trial certainly would be consideration for another risk analysis as to whether, in fact, a verdict would drive another event in the area. So security is certainly well visible.
And it's not just security now, especially when the verdict comes down, getting him from the courthouse back to prison and prison to the courthouse.
Exactly.
Is going to be
much of that,
huge.
as well as the witnesses too. You know, we don't see that on media as to bringing him from wherever he is to the courthouse and back, as well as the witnesses that are going up front and testifying.
No matter if this trial is over or not, let's look at the Boston Marathon. Last year we saw increased security. Is this going to be the protocol from now on?
I would suggest that any time there's a major event in the United States from this point on, you'll have equal kinds of considerations for different kinds of security. This particular one may have additional security because of the proximity of the verdict, maybe at the same time, or maybe something might transpire during that trial, which would give them better capability to have another event during the next marathon.
And
hopefully not.
And they were talking about in the air and in cameras all over the place. The next challenge, General, is going to be when Pope Francis visits Washington, New York, and of course Philadelphia.
I would certainly suggest that would be of equal concern and a challenge to have that kind of security too.
All right, General Centracchio, as always, thank you for your thoughts and thanks for watching.